I never thought I would be sitting in a courtroom over 5-gallon fuel cans. But here I was, watching my HOA president squirm in her seat as the judge reviewed the evidence on his tablet. My name is Brandon Richards, and I have lived in the Pleasant Valley Estates community in Aurora, Colorado for 8 years. I am a landscape contractor who runs my own business, and I also provide snow plowing services during the winter months for my neighbors and several commercial properties around the Denver metro area. The work is honest, the pay is decent, and I genuinely enjoy helping people dig out after a heavy snowfall. Colorado winters can be brutal, and there is something satisfying about clearing a driveway at 6 in the morning so someone can get to work on time. The trouble started on a Wednesday morning in early February. We had just gotten hammered with about 14 inches of wet, heavy snow overnight. My phone had been buzzing since 4 in the morning with requests from my regular clients. I threw on my insulated coveralls, grabbed my thermos of coffee, and headed out to my garage where I kept my plow truck ready to go. That is when I noticed something was wrong. The red 5-gallon fuel cans I always kept lined up against the back wall of my garage were missing. Not just 1 or 2, but all 6 of them. I keep my garage meticulously organized because I need to access my equipment quickly, and those cans are always in the same spot, filled and ready for long days of plowing. Each can hold either gasoline for my smaller equipment or diesel for the plow truck's auxiliary tank. We are talking about probably $150 worth of fuel, plus another $200 in cans themselves. I stood there in the dark garage, my breath fogging in the cold air, trying to make sense of it. My garage door had been closed. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing else was missing, just the fuel cans. I walked around the side of my house where I also kept a small storage shed. The door was slightly ajar, and when I opened it fully, I found more missing items. My backup hydraulic fluid for the plow, a case of oil, and my spare jerry can with another 5 gallons of diesel. This was not just annoying. This was sabotage. Without adequate fuel reserves, I would have to stop mid-route to refuel at gas stations, adding hours to an already long day. Some of my commercial clients had contractual time requirements. If I did not clear their parking lots by 7 in the morning, I would face penalties. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my security camera app. I had installed a comprehensive system about 6 months earlier after some packages went missing from porches around the neighborhood. 4 cameras covered different angles of my property. One on the front porch, one on the garage, one covering the driveway and side yard, and one on the back deck. All of them recorded continuously to a cloud storage service. I scrubbed backward through the footage, past the falling snow, past the quiet evening hours. Then at around 10:30 the previous night, I saw movement. The garage camera picked up the first angle. A figure in a dark coat approached my garage. The motion-sensing floodlight clicked on, and I could see clearly who it was. Patricia Langford, the president of the Pleasant Valley Estates HOA board, and her son, a guy in his mid-20s named Derek, who I had seen around the neighborhood but never really spoken to. I watched in disbelief as Patricia used some kind of tool to jimmy open my garage door. It took her about 3 minutes. Derek stood watch, looking around nervously. Once inside, they worked quickly. Derek grabbed the fuel cans 2 at a time, carrying them out to a silver Lexus SUV parked at the curb with its lights off. Patricia directed him, pointing and gesturing. The side camera caught them moving around to the storage shed next. This lock was easier, apparently, because she had it open in under a minute. They cleaned out everything fuel-related. The whole operation took maybe 15 minutes. Then they loaded up and drove off. The front camera caught the license plate clearly. It was Patricia's vehicle. I had seen it parked in the HOA community center lot 100 times. I sat down on my workbench, replaying the footage 3 more times. Why would the HOA president steal my fuel? Patricia had been a thorn in my side for years. She had cited me for parking my work truck on the street overnight, for having my trailer visible from the road, for letting my grass get half an inch too tall once. She ran the HOA like a personal fiefdom, sending out violation notices for the smallest infractions. But this was different. This was an actual crime. I checked the timestamps on all 4 camera angles. Each one captured parts of the theft. The footage was clear, well lit thanks to my floodlights, and absolutely damning. I downloaded all of it to my phone and backed it up to my personal computer, but I still had a problem. I had jobs to do and I was now short on fuel. I made a quick decision. I would deal with Patricia later. Right now, I needed to take care of my clients. I grabbed what fuel I had left in my truck's main tank and the small emergency can I kept in the cab, fired up the engine, and headed out into the snowy streets. The plowing took until almost 3 in the afternoon. I had to stop twice to refuel, which put me behind schedule. I managed to avoid penalties, but just barely. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, sore, and absolutely furious. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the truck, and sat there for a minute, collecting my thoughts. Then I saw Patricia walking down the sidewalk toward my house. She was wearing a cream-colored parka and had her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She carried a clipboard, which was never a good sign. Patricia was in her early 50s, thin and sharp-featured, with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. I climbed out of my truck as she approached. "Mr. Richards," she called out, her voice carrying that saccharine, false politeness she always used. "I need to speak with you about a violation." A violation? I was too tired for this. "Yes. I noticed your commercial vehicle was parked on the street from approximately 4:15 this morning until 6:45. That is well beyond the 2-hour maximum allowed by our community covenants. I will need to issue you a fine of $150. I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. She had stolen from me less than 12 hours ago, and now she was here to fine me for parking violations. You have got to be kidding me. "I do not kid about community standards, Mr. Richards. Additionally, I noticed you have been storing commercial equipment in your garage, specifically fuel containers that may constitute a fire hazard. The board has decided these need to be removed immediately." "Those fuel containers were already removed," I said slowly. "Last night, by you." Her expression did not change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "I have no idea what you are talking about." "Right. Well, I have security footage that says otherwise." Now her smile faltered. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I am saying I have video of you and your son breaking into my garage and storage shed at approximately 10:30 last night and stealing 6 fuel cans, a case of oil, hydraulic fluid, and a jerry can. All on camera. 4 different angles. Very clear footage." Patricia's face went pale, then flushed red. "That is a very serious accusation. It is a very serious crime. Breaking and entering. Theft. I am pretty sure there are enhanced penalties for doing it to interfere with someone's business." She recovered quickly, squaring her shoulders. "I think you are confused, Mr. Richards. Perhaps you misplaced your items. In any case, I will be filing this parking violation with the board. You will receive formal notice within 5 business days, and I strongly suggest you address your attitude. The board does not take kindly to hostile homeowners." She turned and walked away before I could respond. I watched her go, shaking my head. This woman was unbelievable. She had been caught on camera committing a crime and was still trying to assert her petty HOA authority over me. I went inside, took a hot shower, and made myself dinner. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and started going through my options. I could call the police right now and file a report. That was the obvious move, but something made me hesitate. I wanted to understand why Patricia had done this. What was her end game? Was it just harassment, or was there something else going on? I decided to wait. I would keep the footage safe and see what Patricia's next move was. Maybe she would realize the jeopardy she was in and back off. Maybe this would blow over. I was wrong. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from the Pleasant Valley Estates HOA. Inside was a formal notice of violation, not just for the parking issue, but for multiple infractions. Apparently, I was being cited for unauthorized commercial activity, improper storage of hazardous materials, failure to maintain approved exterior paint colors, and aggressive behavior toward HOA officials. The letter stated that I was being fined a total of $2,300, payable within 30 days. If I failed to pay, the HOA would place a lien on my property. I read the letter 3 times, my blood pressure rising with each pass. The paint color thing was nonsense. My house was beige, exactly as specified in the covenants. The hazardous materials she was referring to were the fuel cans she had stolen. The aggressive behavior claim was presumably based on our conversation in my driveway. And the commercial activity was my legitimate business, which I had been running from my home since before Patricia even moved into the neighborhood. This was retaliation. She knew I had evidence against her, and she was trying to bury me in HOA fines and legal threats. I called a lawyer the next morning. His name was Martin Chen, and he specialized in property law and HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Denver, in one of those modern glass buildings near Union Station. I drove in and met with him that afternoon. Martin was about 40, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He listened carefully as I explained the situation, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," he said. "The HOA president broke into your garage and storage shed, stole your fuel and equipment, and is now retaliating against you with bogus fines because you confronted her about it." "That is exactly what happened, and I have video evidence of the theft. May I see it?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the footage from all 4 camera angles. He watched in silence, his expression growing more incredulous with each replay. "This is remarkable," he finally said. "She actually did this, on camera. She did not know about the cameras. I installed them fairly recently, and they are small, easy to miss at night." Martin rewound the footage and paused on a clear shot of Patricia's face as she worked on the garage door. "This is as solid as evidence gets in a case like this. You have her identity, clear video of the crime being committed, timestamps, and multiple angles. Most prosecutors would love to have evidence this clean. So what do I do?" "Well, you have 2 separate issues here, the criminal matter and the HOA matter. For the criminal side, you need to file a police report. What she did is burglary and theft, probably also criminal mischief. In Colorado, burglary of a building is a felony if it is done with intent to commit a crime inside. Given that she broke into your garage specifically to steal, that is pretty clear. And the HOA, that is more complicated. HOAs have a lot of power in Colorado, but they are not above the law. She is abusing her position to retaliate against you, which is illegal. However, fighting an HOA is often expensive and time-consuming. They have legal funds and insurance to cover their defense costs. You would be paying out of pocket. But I would win, right? I mean, this is obviously retaliation. Probably, yes. But it could take months or even years and cost you tens of thousands in legal fees. Even if you win, collecting on a judgment can be difficult. He paused, tapping his pen against the notepad. However, there is another approach. If Patricia is charged criminally, and especially if she is convicted, it becomes much harder for the HOA to defend its actions. Her credibility is destroyed. Any claims she has made against you become suspect, and the HOA board would likely remove her, if only to protect themselves from liability. So I should go to the police first. I think that is the smart play. File a police report, give them this footage, let the criminal justice system do its work. In the meantime, I would draft a response to the HOA's violation notice. We will dispute every claim and put them on notice that we know about Patricia's illegal conduct. That might be enough to make them back off while the criminal case proceeds. I hired Martin on the spot and drove straight to the Aurora Police Department. The station was on East Alameda Avenue, a low brick building that always seemed busier than it should be. I waited about 40 minutes before an officer called me back to a small interview room. The officer's name was Detective Sarah Mitchum. She was in her 30s, with short brown hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. I explained the situation and showed her the video on my phone. She watched it twice, taking notes, then asked me to email the files to her official address. "This is pretty straightforward," she said. "Do you know why she did this? Is there some kind of ongoing dispute between you two?" She is the HOA president. She has been harassing me for years over minor violations. I think she is trying to force me to sell my house and move out of the neighborhood. I run a business from home and she does not like it. Has she ever done anything like this before? Stolen from you or damaged your property? Not that I know of. But like I said, she has been constantly citing me for violations. Some of them completely made up. Detective Mitchum nodded. "Okay. I am going to write this up as a burglary and theft case. Given the video evidence, I will probably be able to get an arrest warrant pretty quickly. I will need you to make a formal statement, and I will need an itemized list of what was stolen and its value. Will I get my stuff back? If we find it, yes. But that is not guaranteed. She may have disposed of it or given it away. In any case, she will be liable for the value." I spent the next hour giving my formal statement and writing out a detailed list of everything that had been taken. 5-gallon gas cans, diesel, gasoline, hydraulic fluid, motor oil, the jerry can. I estimated the total value at around $400. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to bump the charges up. Detective Mitchum said she would be in touch and sent me on my way. I drove home feeling like I had finally taken control of the situation. Patricia had made a serious mistake, and now she was going to face consequences. The next week was quiet. I did not hear from the HOA. I did not see Patricia around the neighborhood. I went about my business, plowing driveways when it snowed, doing my regular landscape maintenance work. Martin sent a formal response to the HOA's violation notice, disputing each claim and threatening legal action if they continued to harass me. I kept checking my security cameras, but there was no further suspicious activity. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I was in my garage organizing some tools when I heard a knock on my front door. I walked around and found Detective Mitchum standing on my porch with another officer I did not recognize. "Mr. Richards," she said, "I wanted to give you an update. We executed a search warrant at Patricia Langford's residence this morning. We recovered 4 of your fuel cans in her garage. She and her son Derek have both been arrested and charged with second-degree burglary and theft." I felt a surge of satisfaction. That is great news. There is more. When we searched her home, we found evidence that she has been doing this to other homeowners in your community. We found tools for picking locks, a list of addresses, and a ledger documenting other thefts. It looks like she has been stealing from people she has conflicts with as a way to harass them. We are contacting the other potential victims now. You are kidding. I wish I was. This woman has been running a personal vendetta campaign against multiple homeowners. We found items belonging to at least 6 other people. Garden equipment, tools, decorations, even someone's mailbox. She kept most of it in her basement like some kind of trophy collection. That is insane. It is definitely unusual. Anyway, I wanted you to know that the case is moving forward. She was arraigned this morning. Bail was set at $10,000. She posted it and has been released pending trial. What happens now? The district attorney's office will handle the prosecution. You will probably be called as a witness at some point. In the meantime, if she contacts you or tries to retaliate in any way, let me know immediately. There are conditions of her release that prohibit her from interfering with witnesses. After Detective Mitchum left, I sat on my couch and tried to process everything. Patricia had not just targeted me. She had been waging a campaign against multiple neighbors, stealing from them, harassing them, using her position in the HOA to make their lives miserable. It was vindictive and petty and completely unhinged. That afternoon, my phone started ringing. First, it was my neighbor Tom Kellerman, who lived 4 houses down. "Brandon, did you hear? Patricia got arrested. The cops were at her house this morning." "Yeah, I heard. She stole my fuel cans last week. I had her on camera." "No way. She took my leaf blower and hedge trimmer back in November." "I thought I just misplaced them, but now the cops are saying she had them in her basement. This is crazy." Then it was Angela Morrison from across the street. Patricia had stolen her decorative garden gnomes and a hose reel. Then Kevin Zhang, who discovered that Patricia had taken his snow shovel and a bag of ice melt from his front porch. The calls kept coming. By evening, I had heard from 8 different neighbors, all victims of Patricia's theft spree. The neighborhood was in an uproar. An emergency HOA meeting was called for that Friday evening at the community center. I decided to attend, curious to see how the board would handle the situation. The Pleasant Valley Estates Community Center was a small building near the neighborhood entrance, with a meeting room that could hold about 50 people. When I arrived at 7, the parking lot was already packed. I found a spot on the street and walked in. The meeting room was standing room only. I recognized most of the faces. These were my neighbors, people I had lived near for years, and they all looked angry. The HOA board sat at a table at the front of the room. There were 5 members. Patricia's chair was conspicuously empty. The vice president, a man named Gary Kellerman, Tom's older brother, called the meeting to order. He looked uncomfortable. "Thank you all for coming," Gary began. "I know there have been some disturbing developments this week involving our board president. I want to assure everyone that the board takes these allegations very seriously." "Allegations?" someone shouted from the back. "She was arrested. The cops found stolen property in her house." Gary held up his hands. "You are right. Poor choice of words. Patricia has been charged with serious crimes." The board met in emergency session yesterday, and we voted unanimously to remove her from her position as president, effective immediately. We also voted to place her on indefinite suspension from the board pending the outcome of the criminal case. There was a murmur of approval from the crowd. Someone asked, "What about all the fines she issued? Are those still valid?" "That is a complicated question," Gary said. "We are reviewing all violation notices issued in the past 2 years." If there is evidence that any were retaliatory or baseless, we will rescind them. However, that process will take some time. If you believe you were unfairly targeted, please submit a written appeal to the board." Tom stood up. "I want to know how this happened. How did Patricia get away with this for so long? Where was the oversight?" Gary looked pained. "That is a fair question. The truth is, Patricia ran the HOA with very little input from the rest of the board. She handled most of the day-to-day operations herself. We trusted her. That trust was clearly misplaced. Moving forward, we are implementing new procedures to ensure better oversight and accountability." The meeting went on for almost 2 hours. People vented their frustrations. Stories came out about Patricia's behavior, her petty tyrannies, her bullying tactics. It became clear that she had made enemies of half the neighborhood. Several people suggested suing the HOA for allowing her to act unchecked. Gary promised to look into the HOA's insurance coverage and liability. When the meeting finally ended, I walked out with Tom. "This is unbelievable," he said. "I knew Patricia was uptight, but I never thought she was a criminal. Yeah, I am just glad I had those cameras. You should show that footage at the trial. Make sure everyone sees what she did." "I will." The DA already has copies. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. The HOA rescinded my fines. Martin sent them a strongly worded letter threatening legal action if they tried anything like that again. I got my fuel cans back from the police evidence locker. The other neighbors got their stolen property back too, or at least most of it. Patricia's criminal case moved through the system. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA was not interested in going easy on her. The evidence was too strong, and there were too many victims. The case went to trial in early May. I was called to testify on the second day. The courthouse in Arapahoe County was a large, modern building in Centennial. I met with the prosecutor, an assistant DA named Lisa Fernandez, before taking the stand. She was confident and well prepared. "Just tell the truth," she said. "Explain what happened, and I will walk you through the video evidence." Her lawyer might try to attack your credibility or suggest you fabricated the footage somehow, but that is pretty hard to do with 4 camera angles and cloud storage timestamps. When I took the stand, I was nervous, but Lisa made it easy. She asked me to describe the night of the theft, how I discovered the missing fuel cans, and what I found on my security footage. Then she played the video for the jury. The courtroom was silent as they watched Patricia and Derek breaking into my garage, stealing my property, and driving away when it was over. Patricia's lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit, tried to suggest that I had some kind of grudge against Patricia and had staged the whole thing. But he could not explain how I would have convinced Patricia to participate in a staged burglary, or why 4 separate cameras all captured the same event from different angles with consistent timestamps. His cross-examination fell flat. Other neighbors testified too. Tom talked about his stolen tools. Angela described her missing garden decorations. Kevin explained how Patricia had taken his snow removal equipment right before a major storm. The pattern was clear. Patricia had been systematically targeting homeowners she did not like, stealing from them, and using her HOA position to harass them further. The trial lasted a week. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Patricia was convicted of multiple counts of burglary and theft. Derek was convicted as an accomplice. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. I attended the sentencing hearing with several other neighbors. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Ruth Martinez. She listened to victim impact statements from 5 different homeowners. When it was my turn, I kept it brief. "Your Honor, Patricia Langford abused her position of trust in our community. She used her authority to target people she disagreed with. She stole from us, harassed us, and made our lives difficult for no reason other than her own ego. I think she needs to be held accountable not just for the thefts, but for the abuse of power. Judge Martinez nodded. When it was time for sentencing, she did not mince words. Miss Langford, you held a position of responsibility in your community. You were trusted to uphold standards and resolve disputes fairly. Instead, you engaged in a campaign of harassment and theft against your own neighbors. You violated that trust in the most fundamental way. This court takes such abuses of authority very seriously. She sentenced Patricia to 3 years in prison, with credit for time served. Derek got 18 months. Both were ordered to pay restitution to all the victims. The judge also imposed a condition that upon release, Patricia was barred from serving on any HOA board or similar organization for 10 years. I walked out of the courthouse feeling vindicated. It had been a long 4 months, but justice had been served. Patricia's reign of terror over Pleasant Valley estates was over. Back in the neighborhood, things improved dramatically. Gary took over as HOA president and proved to be far more reasonable. He eliminated many of the petty rules Patricia had enforced. The board adopted new policies requiring multiple board members to approve any violation notices and created an appeals process for homeowners who felt they were being treated unfairly. The whole atmosphere of the community changed. People were friendlier. There was less tension. I ran into Tom one Saturday morning while I was mowing my lawn. He came over with a 6-pack of beer and we sat on my porch. I have been thinking about what happened with Patricia, he said, handing me a cold bottle. It is crazy how one person can make everyone miserable. Yeah. I am just glad it is over. Your cameras really saved the day. If you had not caught her on video, she would still be running the HOA, stealing from people, making everyone's life hell. I got lucky. I almost did not install the cameras. I was on the fence about whether it was worth the cost. Best investment you ever made. He took a drink. You know, the board is talking about putting you up for a position. They need someone with common sense who is not going to go on a power trip. I laughed. I appreciate the thought, but I do not think I am cut out for HOA politics. I just want to live my life and run my business without someone breathing down my neck about where I park my truck. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, let me know. I think people would vote for you in a heartbeat. Summer came, and life in Pleasant Valley estates settled into a pleasant rhythm. I stayed busy with my landscaping business. The snow plowing season had been profitable despite Patricia's interference, and I was able to invest in some new equipment. I even hired an assistant, a young guy named Marcus who was working his way through community college. One afternoon in late July, I was coming home from a job site when I saw a moving truck parked in front of Patricia's house. Her husband was loading boxes. Patricia was in prison, and apparently he had decided to move out of the neighborhood. I could not blame him. The stigma of what his wife had done must have been unbearable. I pulled into my driveway and went inside without saying anything. There was nothing to say. Patricia had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. Her husband was collateral damage, but that was not my problem. That evening, I sat on my back deck with a cold drink and watched the sunset. The mountains were visible in the distance, their peaks still snow-capped even in summer. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually enjoy my home without constantly looking over my shoulder for the next HOA violation notice. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin, my lawyer. Saw the news about Patricia's husband moving. Just wanted to check in and make sure everything is good on your end. I texted back, All good. Thanks for everything. Anytime. Let me know if the HOA gives you any more trouble, but I think you are in the clear now. I hoped he was right. The whole ordeal had been exhausting and expensive, but it was worth it to finally have peace. I thought about what Tom had said, about how one person could make so many others miserable. It was true. But it was also true that one person standing up and fighting back could change everything. The security cameras were still running, recording everything that happened on my property. I checked the app occasionally, but there was never anything unusual. Just neighbors walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the occasional delivery driver. Normal, peaceful suburban life. In early September, I received a check in the mail from the Colorado Department of Corrections. It was Patricia's first restitution payment, $150 toward the $400 she owed me. It was not much, but it was something. A small acknowledgement that what she did was wrong and that there were consequences. I deposited the check and went about my day. The leaves were starting to turn, which meant fall cleanup season was approaching. I needed to service my equipment and line up clients. The rhythm of work was comforting. There was always something to do, always another job on the horizon. One Saturday in October, the HOA held its annual fall festival in the community park. It was a tradition that had fallen by the wayside during Patricia's tenure, but Gary had revived it. There were food trucks, a bounce house for kids, and live music from a local band. I stopped by with Marcus, and we grabbed some barbecue and wandered around. The atmosphere was completely different from the tense, fearful vibe that had pervaded the neighborhood during Patricia's reign. People were laughing and talking. Kids were running around. It felt like a real community, not a collection of people living in fear of their HOA president. Angela came over with her husband and thanked me again for standing up to Patricia. "You really started something," she said. "If you had not gone to the police, she would still be terrorizing all of us." "I just did what anyone would do. She stole my stuff. I had proof. It was not that complicated." Maybe, but a lot of people would have just let it go. They would have been too scared of retaliation or too tired to fight. You fought back, and it made a difference. Her words stuck with me. I had not thought of myself as particularly brave or heroic. I was just a guy who was tired of being pushed around, but maybe that was enough. Maybe sometimes standing up for yourself was all it took to change things. Winter came early that year. We got our first significant snowfall in mid-November, and I was back out with my plow truck, clearing driveways and parking lots. The work was hard and the hours were long, but I loved it. There was something meditative about driving through the dark, watching the snow pile up, knowing that I was helping people get on with their lives. My fuel cans were back in their place in the garage, full and ready. I had added even more security cameras, including one inside the garage itself. I was not taking any chances. Patricia was in prison, but the experience had taught me to be vigilant. On a cold morning in December, I was plowing the parking lot of a strip mall in Aurora when my phone rang. It was Detective Mitchum. I pulled over and answered. "Mr. Richards, I wanted to give you an update. Patricia Langford tried to appeal her conviction. The appellate court rejected it this morning. Her conviction and sentence are final." "That is good to hear. I figured she would try to fight it." Her lawyer argued that the video evidence should have been suppressed because you did not have signs posted warning about security cameras. The court ruled that you have no obligation to warn potential criminals, that they are being recorded on your own property. It was a pretty weak argument to begin with. So it is really over. It is really over. She will serve her full sentence minus time off for good behavior. You should not have to worry about her anymore. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a moment, watching the snow fall. It was over. Patricia was not coming back. The nightmare was finally, truly finished. I finished plowing the lot and moved on to my next job. The day was long but productive. By the time I got home that evening, I was tired but satisfied. I parked my truck, grabbed my gear, and headed inside. The house was warm and welcoming. I made dinner, watched some TV, and went to bed early. Life went on. The seasons changed. Patricia's house eventually sold to a young couple with 2 small kids. They were friendly and normal and did not care that I parked my work truck in my driveway. The HOA continued to operate smoothly under Gary's leadership. Violation notices became rare, and when they were issued, they were for actual problems, not petty grievances. I expanded my business, adding another truck and 2 more employees. The snow plowing operation grew too. I picked up several new commercial contracts and became one of the busier plow services in the Aurora area. On particularly heavy snow days, I would see other plow trucks out working, and we would give each other a wave or a honk. There was a camaraderie among people who worked through the night to keep the city moving. One evening in March, almost a year after Patricia's sentencing, I was reviewing my security camera footage from the previous week. I did this periodically, just to make sure everything was working properly and to check for any unusual activity. As I scrolled through the recordings, I realized something. I had not seen anything suspicious in months. No prowlers, no package thieves, no HOA presidents stealing fuel cans. Just normal life. I closed the app and leaned back in my chair. The cameras had saved me. They had given me the evidence I needed to prove what Patricia had done and to hold her accountable. But more than that, they had given me peace of mind. I knew that if anything happened, if anyone tried to target me again, I would have proof. I would have recourse. That summer, Tom convinced me to join the HOA board. I was reluctant at first, but he made a good case. We need people who understand what it is like to be on the receiving end of HOA overreach, he said. You will make sure we do not turn into another Patricia situation. I agreed to serve a 2-year term. The work was boring but necessary. We reviewed violation reports, approved maintenance projects, and settled minor disputes between neighbors. It was nothing like Patricia's autocratic style. Every decision required a vote. Every homeowner had the right to appeal. We were transparent and fair. At one meeting, we discussed updating the community covenants. Several of the rules Patricia had enforced were outdated or unnecessarily restrictive. We voted to eliminate the parking restrictions that had caused me so much trouble. We relaxed the rules about home-based businesses. We created clearer guidelines for what constituted an actual violation versus a minor aesthetic choice. The changes were popular. Homeowners felt like they had more freedom while still maintaining reasonable standards for the community. Property values held steady. People were happy. I served out my term and decided not to run for re-election. I had done my part. The HOA was in good hands with other reasonable people who understood the need for balance. I went back to focusing on my business and living my life. Years passed. Patricia was released from prison after serving just over 2 years. I heard she moved to a different state, somewhere in the Midwest, to live with relatives. Derek moved away too. I never saw either of them again. The whole episode faded into neighborhood lore, a cautionary tale about what happens when power goes unchecked. I kept the security camera footage backed up on multiple hard drives. It was evidence, but it was also a reminder that standing up for yourself matters. That documentation is crucial. That even when facing someone in a position of authority, you have rights and you can fight back. The fuel can still sit in my garage, lined up neatly against the back wall. They are just tools, Nothing special, but they represent something bigger. They represent the moment I decided I had had enough. The moment I stopped accepting Patricia's harassment and started gathering evidence. The moment I took control. Sometimes people ask me about what happened. New neighbors who move in and hear the story secondhand. I tell them the truth. I explain how the HOA president stole from me and how I caught her on camera. I describe the legal process and the trial, and I always end with the same advice. Install security cameras, document everything, know your rights, and do not let anyone push you around no matter what title they have. It is simple advice, but it is important. People in positions of power, whether it is an HOA board or any other organization, can abuse that power if no one holds them accountable. Patricia thought she was untouchable. She thought she could steal from her neighbors and intimidate them into silence. She was wrong. The cameras caught her. The legal system punished her. And the community moved on, stronger and more unified for having gone through the ordeal together. I still plow driveways in the winter. I still run my landscaping business in the summer. I still live in Pleasant Valley Estates, in the house I have owned for over a decade now. But things are different. Better. The neighborhood is a community again, not a dictatorship. People look out for each other. The HOA serves its members instead of ruling over them. And my fuel cans are exactly where they should be in my garage, undisturbed. The cameras watch over them and over everything else. Silent guardians that provide evidence and peace of mind. They are the reason Patricia is in prison instead of still making my life miserable. They are the reason I can live without fear. I check the camera feeds one last time before bed. Everything is quiet. The neighborhood is peaceful. Snow is forecast for tomorrow, which means another early morning and a long day of plowing. But I am ready. My equipment is maintained. My fuel tanks are full. My business is thriving. Life is good. And it is good because I stood up for myself, documented the truth, and refused to be a victim. The security cameras were the tool, but the decision to fight back was mine. That decision changed everything. It changed my life, my neighborhood, and probably the lives of every homeowner who would have been Patricia's future targets. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had not installed those cameras. Would I have known for certain who stole my fuel? Would the police have taken my complaint seriously without evidence? Would Patricia still be running the HOA, stealing from neighbors, issuing bogus fines, making everyone miserable probably? Almost certainly. But I did install the cameras. I did have the evidence. And I did take action. That made all the difference. 4 camera angles captured a crime in progress and brought down a petty tyrant who had terrorized an entire neighborhood. It sounds dramatic when I put it that way, but it is true. The footage is still saved, still backed up, still available if anyone ever needs it. But I doubt anyone will. Patricia is gone. Derek is gone. The HOA operates fairly now. The neighborhood is at peace. And me. I am just a guy who plows snow and mows lawns and lives in a nice community in Aurora, Colorado. I have security cameras and fuel cans and a successful business. I have good neighbors and a reasonable HOA. I have peace of mind. That is all I ever wanted. And thanks to 4 camera angles and a willingness to fight back, that is exactly what I have.